Good afternoon, everybody. Big week for our team. Obviously, going to have a critical stretch, eight straight weeks where we'll have Sunday games, allowing our team to have full good weeks of preparation, and obviously an NFC North game on the road. We're 1-0 this year in the NFC North. We've got to try to compete like crazy in a really talented division, a tough place to go play. Dan Campbell, one of the best head coaches in the NFL, getting his team ready to play. So it's going to be a challenge, coming off of a little extra time, continuing to get some guys recovered and rested, and looking forward to getting on the practice field today. As you guys saw, we did put Carson Wentz on injured reserve and sign John Wolford to the practice squad. Carson is just he's been everything we had hoped and more when he arrived, from a veteran experience guy that clearly loves football, loves everything about what he's joined here in Minnesota, and it's been fun coaching Carson. Can't say enough about his just desire to compete and play and try to take advantage of the opportunity that he had to help us win, and he did that twice and played some really good football for us throughout, with so many things happening to our team and being kind of a steady force during that time. Just want to commend him for that, and he's going to get fixed up. Also have his baby girl, and still be around our quarterback room and be around our young guys in that room. As a real foundational piece in that room with all of his experiences to go along with it. But JJ McCarthy will have a full week of preparation. He's in a really good place from a health standpoint, and has been really he's made multiple comments to me about just the throughout the rehab, but being able to watch Carson play the position, play it as a new player in our offense, and see ways he was able to distribute the football, get the ball out of his hands, completions, and the positive effect that had on the offense in every capacity. So excited about getting on the field. Got some other guys working their way back as well, and feel good about where our team's going to be at to go attack this week of practice. Open it up to you guys.
When we just talked to Carson about it, can you offer some insight in just the decisions that are happening in the second half Thursday about whether to leave him in or whether to pull him out of the game?
Yeah, I think it goes back to the starting point of when he first kind of sustained the injury against Cleveland, able to come back in the game and finish that game, and then we were able to kind of determine with further testing that he had a torn labrum in his non-throwing kind of left shoulder, and our medical team, which, between our training staff and doctors here locally, which I believe is the best in the National Football League, but then also consulting, the top people in their fields, orthopedic surgeon-wise. And, it was determined that if Carson wanted to give it a go, he could, and it would be more of a kind of a pain tolerance thing. But he was able to, get his strength and feel like he was capable of going in and playing. He had some really good practices, and we felt encouraged by giving Carson the opportunity to kind of make the call and then commit to it, and he did that, and just the competitiveness and the ability to what he showed his teammates, and a lot of things about loving football and competing and trying to leave it all out there for your team. As a coach, you want to give players the opportunity to do that, but always after you consult with the medical staff, and that consultation has to begin and start with the player and the medical staff. And as a coach, you have to allow that to happen before you're a part of the conversations at all. And then the conversations are purely in what's in the best interest of the player. And at that point, Carson thought what was in the best interest of him was getting to play football and quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings, and felt equipped and capable to do that. In regards to the second half, it was one of those things where after every drive, you can visually see that he took some hits and was in pain, and making sure before we put him back on the field that really the dynamic had not changed. It was just circumstances of him kind of managing it, and then when the time came to take him out of the game, it was a football decision, and wanted to make sure that we did right by him there late in the game when it was kind of out of reach. But the way we operate, where we believe we're out of reach might be a little different than how folks watching the game might believe it to be. And we've had some games where, thank goodness, we had that mindset because we found a way to win some of those. And that's just the belief that the guys have. And when you got a guy like that that's committed to play through something, as long as the medical staff doesn't give me any new information to that, that's kind of how that took place.
When it comes to letting him play in the second half and whatnot, and him telling you he's good to go, was there ever a thought in your mind where it's like, maybe I should protect this guy and pull him out because he's taking a beating here?
Yeah, I think, once again, like there is a level as the coach where your responsibility, as much as I care for these players and the relationships that I've built with these players, that's always there for sure. But at the same time, I think it's, if the medical staff is giving you information and the player is giving you information to kind of confirm that, it becomes a football decision at that point to go along with what's in the best interest of the health of the player. And when he's deemed to be really, we went into this thing knowing it was kind of a pain tolerance situation, and he would be able to play through it and not make it worse until he inevitably had to, make the decision that we met and talked about to get the surgery. You have an obligation also to the player to let them, compete and see it through to a certain point where then you have to be smart as a head coach and do what's best for the player.
So independent of where the game's at or, whether you're close or still in it or not, like what's in your mind, and maybe it's different for every coach, but in your mind, like what's the level that, independent of all those things, if a guy is in pain, you take him out just for that reason?
Yeah, I think there's an absolute level there, and I think you have to make that decision. And ultimately, that's not a decision you make solely, Kevin, on your own. It comes with a lot more, people from a lot more people with expertise, and can then ultimately, when you ask a player, like, can you still go? Is it? Can you go out there and play? And they said absolutely nothing's changed. It's just, I can still go. You then have to make the decision, as the head coach, and that's my responsibility.
But you're seeing him, like, I don't know how much you can see from the side. He referenced that people on the sidelines can't always see what the TV copy shows, but are you seeing the expressions on his face?
No, I mean, that's, I know the TV copies, especially in those games where there's they see everything. You're trying to see it as much as you can, and then really it comes down to the dialogue with the player, and after the medical staff's had a chance to check in with him as well. So as visible as it is to everybody, I understand that, but no, you don't always get the, sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. Sometimes, there might be conversation with the official going on. There might be conversation with the special teams unit, regarding the punt, possible fakes, things like that things come up where you just can't be in pure observation mode, especially the way that my role here is as the head coach and the play caller and having direct dialogue with Flo and Matt Daniels as well. So I'd love to be able to say that I see it all. That's where you fall back on, the great staff that we do have, and you try to make the best decision with all the information that you do have, with the most important information being, especially with a veteran player who's been through, quite a few things in his career and has a total understanding of exactly, where his body's at and the commitment he made to play. You lean into that conversation, as much as you do what the doctors are telling you.
When you're balancing the football decision piece of this with the player, doing the best interest of the player, how do you make that determination of when it's reached a point from a football perspective that, hey, there's no more to be gained from this and it's time to make the move?
Yeah, I think that's where probably the line might be different for some folks compared to either the guy competing on the field or, the team. That line might be different, but there's absolutely a time for that, Ben, and I know that, and I think you guys know that I know that. I think, in this circumstance, we managed, the injury with, as much communication as possible, as much information gathering as possible, as much dialogue with the player to make sure that everybody knew exactly, what the situation was, and he had played in game against the Eagles and kind of, played the whole game and really had no significant issues. So it was a circumstance of he took some hits in that game as well and might have had some similar reactions like a lot of guys do when they take some of those hits. That's, part of playing the quarterback position. And unfortunately, with some of the circumstances we've had with our offense, that's, become far too normal. And we've got to continue to work to rectify those things and also, get as healthy as we can at certain spots. So definitely something that from a standpoint of managing injuries, I feel very good about our protocols, our people in place. And I think over the time that I've been the head coach here, I think that's, stood up pretty well.
Kevin, with JJ, just to be clear, is there anything left that you need to see from him physically in practice, or as of now he's
No.
ready to go?
Kevin, just going back to Thursday night, knowing Carson's situation and knowing that you don't want to put Max in a suboptimal spot, was there ever thought to adding another quarterback who might be more capable in that position?
There's always, we're always going to try to make sure that we can realistically do whatever we can. But I think the unique factor of, our plane left to go to Los Angeles on Wednesday, about 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, whatever it is. So you're really talking about trying to gauge the information on where JJ was at. We worked him out Tuesday morning. You start to see the timeline of once again, that's much more than just, adding somebody here locally that can just drive, hop in the car and get here in a few minutes. It's, bringing people in, physicals, and then that's not even talking about some of the, the installation and the teaching that needs to take place to have that person here and ready to contribute where they can protect themselves just by being able to do their jobs. And I think it's a valid question, Alec. I just, under those circumstances, I think we tried to handle it the best way we could.
JJ, what did you take away or learn from him about those first two games and the subsequent time now? And do you have to adjust your play caller mindset at all to more fit him as opposed to what might be the optimal play with a veteran quarterback, Kevin?
Yeah, I think it's a great point. Starting out, first part of your question, I think what we learned in the Chicago game was, he was able to overcome, and our team was able to overcome a slower start than what we hoped for the season. But then, going back and watching that game and, I've watched it with JJ recently, just looking at some of the principles of how he played and when, the moments in the second half where we were able to, I think we generated 170 yards in the final 17 minutes of the game. He had a ton to do with that just by simply being efficient with his feet and being accurate because of that and, reading progressions and putting the ball in play and throwing completions, and then we were able to run the ball as well, and it kind of married all together. I do think there was, some unique circumstances with that second game. I've said that before against Atlanta, from his family circumstances of being blessed with a child that week and missing some practice time. As a matter of fact, almost all of it. Besides that Friday practice, which, as you guys know, is just not the significant amount of preparation time that you're looking for a young quarterback to then go out and take that practice preparation to the game. And then on top of that, the injury happened, which, could have had a little bit more impact on his lower body mechanics than had he not sustained that injury as far as a consistency and doing it the same way every time. He's had some time to obviously get back on the practice field and spend a lot of time with Josh and myself and our guys, during practice, after practice. He's worked at it. And now we get to kind of continue, hopefully, the progression that we kind of started the season on of going out there. Is it going to be perfect? No, and it doesn't have to be. It just needs to be clear and obvious that, to me, that he's got a good grasp on doing his job, technique, fundamentals, progressions. And I believe in his talent and his ability that will show up. And then in regards to your second question, or second part of the question, I think you're always trying to match what the player, can go out there and exceed with. What do they do well? Not only the quarterback, but our whole group, and ultimately figure out the best way to try to then attack what you're getting from a defensive standpoint to try to put your players in a good situation. And that may be different from Carson to JJ based upon, their ability to execute some things.
Do you regret, to go back now, because that Falcons game has come up a lot, and you mispracticed. Is there a part of you that regrets playing him that week against the Falcons?
It's one of those things where we know now that, a lot of the things we're talking about, it's, we know now or after the fact or things like that. I did feel like when we got him back here on that Friday, I did feel like he had a lot of juice and he had a pretty good day that day. But that, transitioning to every phase of a game plan for a game plan against a good defense, and Atlanta's turned out to be a pretty darn good one defensively. I don't regret in any way doing that because he was also coming off of, I believe he was the NFC Offensive Player of the Week, and he was healthy, and it's hard to take that guy off the field at that point where we had just, 6 days earlier seen him kind of carry the momentum of the end of that game into the locker room where, it was a pretty significant moment for a young player in his first start.
JJ having the athleticism be part of his game, how difficult is that to balance knowing when to use that, but also knowing when he needs to get the ball out quickly to avoid some of the sacks?
Yeah, I think it's part of what young player, we can talk about it as much as possible, and then you're in that moment, whether it's a third down, first down, second down, in the red zone, a chance to score. Only, the player, he just needs reps. He just needs time of, the repetition that you can't get, with a VR headset on. You can't get answers to those questions necessarily wearing a red jersey on the practice field. I think he understands it, and he knows how valuable he is to our team, and the reps for him and continual reps for him and the value of that. So we've talked about it, and I think it is part of his game, though. I think it's an underrated part of his game, but that mindset of protecting myself within the sequence of the down where, we can not only be in position for the next down, but we maintain the ability for him to keep playing quarterback is critical.
Is your backup this week and going forward?
Yes.
You mentioned watching the Bears game with him recently. What was the impetus for that? And then what did you take from that?
It wasn't just the Bears game. It was also the Atlanta game, and kind of going back because I think visually there's some things there that, are kind of I think visual sometimes is the best form of teaching when a guy can see themselves doing it and then see the difference between the two, and then you figure out the why. And I think there's a lot of circumstances, as we kind of just talked about, with maybe the root causes of the inconsistency from one game to the next. But then you most importantly talk about the how we're going to fix it and how we're going to do some things to make sure that we can get you in a rhythm and get you playing with great, base, body, balance, position. I know I've used that term 1,000 times with you, but it's real, and it's a real thing to consistently play the position. And there's ways to rep it and drill it, and then you got to bring those things to each play, regardless of how the previous play went, how the next play is going to go. You got to those things that you can control from a do-your-job standpoint yourself at an NFL level, is what JJ's continuously working to make sure that he does. And when he does that, there's been some really good visual evidence of him playing quarterback.
Last one.
Kevin, what's Josh Oliver's outlook coming off the other night with his foot ankle?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. He's got a kind of a foot sprain where he'll likely not have a chance to participate this week, and ultimately we'll be able to probably reevaluate him next week. But the good news is, where X-rays and everything came back to a point where we avoided kind of that longer term injury with Josh, and I know he's really excited about that. But as with his injury and all the other injuries this year, that'll be something that he'll be working on his rehab as hard as possible to get back when he's able to give it a go, and he feels like he can make that return. He'll be huge to be back in there. Thank you.